Hi, everyone. Um, Thanks for popping in to get a sense of what research is. This will be a brief overview of just introductory concepts to research to give you sort of like a map of what research is and the different types of research approaches that you'll encounter in your review of the literature in your particular capstone topics. First off, it's really important that we acknowledge that there's a variety, a diversity of worldviews and particular lenses that inform how researchers are doing their research. These are the four most prominent worldviews or lenses that you'll probably see in the studies that you'll be reviewing for your literature review in the capstone. And I'm going to describe them in greater detail to help you understand how this will inform how people do research studies. The first worldview that you'll probably encounter is probably seen in a lot of quantitative work. It's called post-positivism. And post-positivism is often seen in science research. You may have encountered this throughout your own science education through K-12 and through higher ed. It's also known as the scientific method. Post-positivistic researchers hold a deterministic philosophy in which causes probably determine effects or outcomes. And this is accomplished through careful observation, measurement of an objective reality that out there, of an objective reality that is out there in the world. And research, the purpose of research is it's needed to uncover this objective reality that already exists. This objective reality that's a series of laws or theories that govern the world. And when post-positivistic researchers use the scientific method, they seek to test, verify, and refine theories to better understand that objective reality in the world. A second worldview or lens that you'll probably encounter in the research is mostly seen in qualitative research or qualitative studies. Constructivism is typically seen in qualitative research where it's assumed that individuals seek understanding of the world in which they live and work. It's understood that individuals have subjective meanings attached to their own lived experiences. And these experiences can be varied, they can be multiple and diverse. And what this does is that it leads researchers to look for the complexity of experience and views, rather than narrowing meanings into a theory that needs to be tested. Theories don't exist out there. There is no objective reality, according to constructivists. Rather, they must be generated from the experiences of individuals themselves. And there are as many theories as there are individuals. A third worldview that you've probably encountered in courses like MLD 688, where you read a lot of social justice theory, is the transformative worldview. So research that's informed by a transformative lens holds that scholarship or any type of study needs to be intertwined with politics and political change. There must be a political change agenda within transformative studies to confront oppression on whatever level it occurs. Thus, researchers who have this lens have an action agenda for reform that changes the lives of their own study participants and the institutions for which these participants are operating in. Research is focused often on the lives of the marginalized and often focuses on questions pertaining to the inequities that they're experiencing. And often, research that incorporates the transformative lens focuses on how institutions work and uncovering problems of oppression, power, and domination. The last worldview or lens is often seen in mixed method studies, but also some qualitative studies and also quantitative studies as well. So it's across the board. The pragmatic lens is focused on application to practice, application to the real world, and what works, and research that determines solutions that work best to solve our biggest social problems. Now, I've mentioned those key terms, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods, and you've probably heard this in many of your MLT classes, having read these different types of studies that come from these different types of research approaches. Now, there are three main research approaches for research, and first I want you to focus on the left-hand column. And the left-hand column is quantitative research. As you may already know, there are multiple ways to conduct quantitative research. For instance, experimental designs are employed to test the effects of a particular program, intervention, treatment, or any sort of medicine on a particular outcome. There's typically a treatment group that is receiving the intervention or treatment, while there's another group that is not receiving it. The differences among the two groups are then evaluated statistically to determine if there truly was an impact of the treatment. Non-experimental designs include survey research, which you probably already have exposure to. In college environments, for instance, we typically administer surveys with multiple choice questions to assess campus climate or assess the degree to which students feel they belong to a college campus. Survey results are then coded quantitatively so that researchers can conduct statistical analyses. There are also multiple ways to conduct qualitative research, and you'll see there some examples of narrative research, phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnographies, and case studies. You may have encountered this in your own past work. One example is narrative research, which I think a lot of students really gravitate to and resonate with because it really revolves around the gathering of stories, the stories and the narratives from people themselves. However, unlike quantitative research, narrative research focuses on words, text, and other images that are gathered for the analysis of themes and patterns. So very much different from quantitative research approaches. And then there's mixed methods, which attempts to bring both quantitative and qualitative research together. There you'll see three examples, and I'll talk about one of them. One of them is the convergent research approach, where quantitative and qualitative methods are used to study a particular social phenomena. If we were to take the previous example of campus climate, a mixed method study would administer the same campus climate survey with those multiple choice questions to students, but at the same time, it would also conduct focus groups asking students themselves their experiences of the campus climate. So that involves discussions, involves dialogue, and the gathering of stories. Both the quantitative and the qualitative results would be utilized to generate a picture of campus climate. So in that sort of study, the quantitative and the qualitative side are weighted evenly. As you can imagine, quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods have different mechanisms for data collection and analysis. In quantitative research, there are predetermined ways of measuring, and this includes tests, surveys, questionnaires, and observation protocols. They've already been designed prior to the study, and researchers are not allowed to change these measures because changing these tools would introduce bias into the study and violate objectivity. Some examples of data collected include performance data, which we see in achievement tests in K-12 schools, attitude data, which we see in what is popularly known as the Gallup polls that gauge political attitudes in the United States, census data, which typically asks multiple choice questions about demographics, and observational data. Observational data is used in a variety of settings. They're often used in schools in particular, where educators can use a numerical instrument to evaluate student behavior. After data is collected, statistical analysis is conducted to produce results related to the topic of interest. In relation to the original example of campus climate in the previous slides, a campus climate survey about students' experiences of belonging has been administered to students. The survey's results, again, would be coded into an extensive spreadsheet, which is then uploaded to statistical software. And in this software, researchers can conduct statistical analyses about campus climate. So for instance, when we force survey results into into numbers, you can actually numerically compare the rates of belonging among racial groups, for instance. Now, on the right-hand side of this table is qualitative methods, and it's almost the opposite of quantitative methods. Qualitative methods is it's more of an iterative and emerging process. So, rather than predetermined measures or surveys, qualitative researchers often begin with tools such as semi-structured interview protocols, like a list of questions that guide a conversation with a participant. So within an interview, a researcher may use questions or refer to questions in the protocol and ask them. But oftentimes, as you can imagine, any conversation with another person, you'll go off script. You'll ask additional questions. And this is all for the purpose of deepening our understanding of the topic and the participants' experiences. This data is then collected and analyzed, and themes and patterns are generated in the analysis. In the case of campus climate again, imagine interviewing 30 students about their sense of belonging on campus, individually. You would most likely hear each person's stories and experiences. And each conversation, um, and in each conversation, you may have initial questions from your interview protocol, but you can imagine that in a conversation with each person, you'll also have spontaneous questions about their experiences. And you'll also hear stories that are as diverse as the people themselves. The analysis of this data would identify the patterns across their experiences, as well as honor their stark differences. Now, taken in between, so mixed methods is in between qualitative and quantitative for a reason in this table. It's basically a combination of quant and qual, data collection and analytical approaches.